Today we've got Katie Taylor, who is an amazing planner here in Billings. Thank you for coming on the podcast, Katie.
Thank you for having me. It's such an honor to be here with you guys to chat about what we're passionate about.
Yeah.
Weddings. All things weddings.
We love it.
Love it.
Yeah.
We do.
So we know you have a pretty interesting story about how you your previous career and how you transitioned into planning events and things.
Yeah.
So to start, could you tell us a little bit more about that? What you were doing in your work before and then the transition?
Absolutely. So my degree is in broadcast journalism. I went to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo in California on the Central Coast, and I jumped into broadcast journalism. I spent nearly 15 years as a television news producer on the West Coast. Yeah, so talk about chaos, just absolute chaos. So as the producer, I put the entire show together from start to finish. I picked the stories that you saw. I was in charge of the photographers, the writers, the journalists themselves. And then during the show, I would time it. I would be in the control room. So if I gave the anchors 15 seconds to say hello and good evening, and they took 20, I'm now 5 seconds heavy. If I lost a reporter and I'm like, oh my gosh, that live shot is now gone, I'd have to communicate that to 10 people like that. So it was just controlled chaos, I like to call it.
Absolutely. It sounds like
and
it was stressful.
A little stressful, a lot bit. But it was just a combination of skills of time management, knowing a little bit about a lot of different things. You know, you'd be sitting in the newsroom typing a story and you'd hear somebody yell out, what's the name of that lake? And then you'd hear a voice. It's like, oh, thanks. And then you keep going. Yeah. So it was just kind of it's an interesting industry in and of itself. And I do have an Emmy, which is so exciting. Sometimes I forget to share that. But then I have others, several awards as well in the journalism world.
Yeah, even if you forget it, we remember and we share. We brag on you. Be like, did you know she has an Emmy?
I do. I can show you.
So you won an Emmy as a producer?
As a producer, yeah. It was for one of, I was doing the morning show and there was a really big rainstorm in Seattle. And we captured somebody being rescued from a river. So it was crazy intense, but it was such a happy ending too.
Yeah.
So at this point in my career with my husband, it was work-life balance was getting it was a really thin, fine line. The news was turning very negative. I was tired of leading the newscast with violence. Right. So I looked at my husband and said, I don't think I want to do this anymore. And so I took about a year to just really find my next thing. And in my family, I'm a large family, I was always kind of the de facto planner. I had planned events for my family, best friend, hey, I'm getting married, can you help me out? So I thought, weddings. What's the most positive thing I can do from this kind of negative aspect? And I jumped into it. And it's been wonderful. I've just loved every moment of it.
That's so awesome.
Yeah, I'm like, let's talk pretty things. Let's talk spreadsheets. Whatever it is, let's talk.
Yeah. Well, it's a little bit of both of those things. You get your happiness, but you also get to work with your skills that you've created with that time management, the organizational, all the things that you got with your producing job career. You get to bring that into your wedding planning, but then you get that cherry on top that it's pretty.
Let's talk linens, let's talk candles, let's talk all the finer points of weddings and kind of the pretty things, the flat lays. Oh, I love a flat lay.
I love that you love a flat lay, because I didn't know that a lot of planners do the flat lays on the wedding day. Yeah.
Sometimes.
And I think that that's so cool that that's something that you can do. And I've seen some that you've done.
Thank you. Beautiful.
Thank you.
So beautiful.
Thank you.
So you're great at that.
Thank you.
That's a skill because it's difficult.
Thank you. I love that. And that's why I always tell my couples, get your details in a little box. Your jewelry, your rings, your ring box, perfume, sometimes a specialty item like a grandma's ring that you may not necessarily be wearing, but how pretty and special to include in a picture. You give these things to me, I give them to you, you do your magic, and then I bring them back. And it's just that way everything too is controlled, especially if there are family pieces or special pieces. We don't want those in multiple hands, and then we've like, I've lost track.
No, we have dealt with that at weddings, and that's one thing we are so pro planners and coordinators, because we've had situations where things get very important things get misplaced during the shuffle, when there hasn't been, either it was a planner, which was more of a family friend, or just, people just putting different things, and it's throwing the whole wedding day off. And
Absolutely.
So that,
there's not one voice.
That's
and that's what the wedding day needs, that team leader, if you will. It's not that you're, I'm in charge. It's that you're the point of contact, and that you're the person that is working behind the scenes when you guys have questions, when the caterer has a question, when the florist is, can I leave this here? That's what it's all about, is being that one point of contact, that one voice, so that the bride and groom can absolutely enjoy their day and be present, so that mom or maid of honor or mother-in-law is not answering these questions. Because when you pull them away, they're now not present.
Right.
Yeah. And you've impacted their day without even thinking about it. And we all have that well-intentioned, well-organized friend or sister or mom who wants to take it on. But my gosh, it's overwhelming. The average wedding takes more than 100 hours to plan. On top of working, maybe you work full-time, maybe you work part-time. Weekends are for relaxing, while weekends are now spent working.
Right.
So why not give yourself the gift of being present, being mindful, being intentional? I have a couple coming up this year, and they want to start the day together by having coffee. They're having a coffee date.
That's awesome.
I've never heard of this.
I love that.
I've never heard of it in all my years. This is the first, and I love it when I find something new.
Yes.
And they said they want to have a moment together, like as before the calm, before the storm.
Yeah.
And I love couples that come to me with moments of intention. Yes. And we can work that in through the timeline throughout the day. Like, and there are some organic moments that really work to that and speak to that, like signing your marriage license, natural. And maybe there's one where the reception space is all decorated and ready to go, and you want to see it. You want to see your vision come to life.
Together.
All that work, and all that planning and all the design time you've put into it. You want to see your work.
That actually is a really good idea, because a lot of times the bride doesn't see it till everybody's
destroyed
gone in there. There's jackets and bottles.
We love them.
And
we love our loved
everywhere.
ones, but they do. Look at this beautiful program. And then, it's just they start shuffling.
Exactly.
And they don't know, and you're right, bags, purses, and things get...
Keys, white
I mean, we make sure, we make sure we're there to get the photographs of it, but that's great to actually plan time for the bride and groom to come and see what they're planning for.
And then you get these really special candid photos of like seeing, and like maybe the bride's face is that like jaw-dropping moment, and like how cool to capture that.
Right.
I just love it.
Right. And a lot, I've heard people say, like we like to do first looks, like we had just for timeline reasons, but also because it creates that special moment.
Exactly.
And so I've heard people say, but that feels manufactured. But on a wedding day, when you have all these things that need to be accomplished, you have to, it's not necessarily manufacturing, but it's planning with intent.
It is. And I love the wording of that, because you're never going to lose that moment of seeing each other at the ceremony. Like that is that you're not losing that. Right. That is still the same. I do like first looks for that intention part, because it also helps calm nerves a little. You can kind of like rest easy, you can breathe, and it's just the two of you, and maybe your photographers and me. But when that moment is so powerful and so impactful, you don't see what's happening here, and it can be so beautiful and wonderful. And from a very selfish timeline point of view, I love a first look, because it allows you to do those photos that you want ahead of time. And that way, during cocktail hour, for example, a time when you can kind of have a snicky snack, maybe a little drinky drink, and chat with those people that have traveled to your wedding. You're not maybe off-site, or you're not away. taking those
You
photos.
have much more time to actually
Much
spend
more
time with your guests.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
and that's kind of like left like a holdover from like the traditional wedding, like kind of like the generation before us. You didn't do the first look and then you were away. So it's just really kind of evolving. And you know, your wedding day, and I'm going to yell it from the mountaintop and scream it until I'm blue, should be a reflection of you, your partner, and you as a couple.
Right.
And if you want to do it one way, why not?
Right.
Why not? You have a team of professionals behind you, your photographers, your planner. You know, if I have a question or my couple has a question, I'm going to bring you guys in to answer it because you're the pros.
Right.
You know, I might have an idea, but I want to hear from you guys. Like, what's the best solution? Or, hey, what do you think about this? And then we work together.
Right.
It's that like team building kind of mentality is how I like to approach it.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, your vendors, especially when you hire true professionals, that's a chef's kiss. It's nobody should be coming in with an ego that it's about them. Because when we started out, whether it was working with other videographers or DJs or I'm trying to think of other planners, they tried to act like it was their show. And they came in, they brought in an ego that's saying, I am all that in the bag of chips. And then it was difficult because it wasn't about the couple anymore.
Yeah.
It was about them and what they could do. And when we've worked with those true chef kiss professionals, that it's not about, it's that team. It's all about what can we do for this couple? What can we do for these individuals and make it about them?
Exactly.
So yeah, I like that how you're like we lean on each other, we
do.
problem solve.
We do.
Because we're professionals, we know how to problem solve. We know how to do all of that.
And as the planner, I may have an advantage of knowing the couple maybe a little more intimately. We spend a little more time together in the role. But what I tell my clients is I work for my clients and I am their advocate. I know their wishes, so I can bring that to the wedding day. I've communicated that ahead of time, and maybe my couple had shared that with you when meeting with you in the early planning process stage. I'm there to make sure the day is as smooth as possible, that it's exactly what they wanted, and there's no room for ego or I'm in charge. Like I don't walk around with a clipboard like snapping my fingers.
No.
It's how can I help you? What can I do for you?
Right.
And I mean, I've been known to call equipment, to get on a ladder, just to do whatever it takes to get the vision executed as seamless and as stress-free as possible.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like that you mentioned just kind of being a team leader for the day and that job is on you and not the bride. Because we've gone to so many weddings and I feel bad for the bride when this happens. Like she's in the getting ready room and there's people coming in and out, asking her questions, asking her to make decisions like this vendor needs this, whatever. Like do you know where this is at? Like, do you know where the groom's whatever is or whatever? And it's just like she's having to just like deal with everything. All
you said that it pulls her out of that memory or that moment that she could be creating and that memory that she could be, that beautiful moment that she could be creating. And
if she can just say, I don't know, ask Katie or ask the planner, whoever it is, like, go ask them.
One of the things I really pride myself on is my day of timeline. Boy, is she intense. And I tell my couples, we front load the work so that the questions, even like down to the teeniest, tiniest detail, this isn't a teeny tiny detail, but some things that couples don't think of is, well, how are you getting home at the end of the night? Or how are you getting to where you're going? And if you're spending the night somewhere, did you pack your overnight bag? Where's your overnight bag? Are you getting on a plane the next day? Do you have your tickets? Are you packed for that trip? is the groom packed for that trip? So it's like, because we're not packing the day of, guys. So it's just like those really fine details, and maybe something that you didn't know you needed to know until you need to know it, and then it might be too late. And so I like to say to my couples, like, I'm not coming to you with those questions on the day of, because if I am, boy, I really haven't done my job, have I? I will come to my clients if it's something that financially impacts them. Maybe the day was running late and we need to extend by an hour. Do you want to do that? No? Okay, so then we really kind of problem solve in the moment, but it's not with, hey, where's the cake topper? No. None of that.
Well, even with like professionals, I will say, like, if the timeline, because weddings, timelines, you can be as detailed in your timeline, but someone's not going to be where they're supposed to be. You know what I mean?
It can go off the rails.
Yes. As professionals, we know how to problem solve and make up that time.
And adapt.
So, like, we might be able to pull from the timeline somewhere else and do that. I almost feel like it's almost like a dance. You know where to step. And when you're working with professionals, you know where we can make up that step if somebody missteps somewhere else.
Exactly.
So it's so nice to work with planners that know what they're doing, because we can do that dance together.
And that's something that we're doing not only in the moment, but sometimes 4, 5, 6 steps ahead. Looking ahead, and then I'm communicating with the photography team, with the DJ, with catering, so that all of these things are still seamless, and there's still a flow to the event, because we're not. I don't want couples to think of it as ceremony, cocktail hour, dinner, toast. It's not as like truncated as that. It may seem that way on paper, but there's really a flow to it, and that's something that I'm watching as well. I had a couple where they decided in the moment they wanted to, during dinner, they wanted to greet each table at the reception, and how wonderful. Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. I'm not going to start toasts because my paper said to.
Right.
They want to do that, and we're going to adapt.
Right.
So you communicate that to the team, and everybody's on the same page. Because sometimes what happens is, without a planner, if you make that change and not everybody knows, your DJ might call for toasts because, well, that's what you guys had talked about.
Yeah, nobody went and told him.
The DJ. Yeah. So there's just those little finer points of the day. Yeah.
Well, and you just have experience with a wedding. I mean, a bride or even a friend that's coordinating, they might not even think of all the people that they need to tell about a change.
Absolutely.
And then it happens, they're like, oh, I probably should have told that person.
Absolutely.
But I mean, it's an honest mistake. They've never planned a wedding before.
Of course. It's their first rodeo.
Right. Right. That's why you lean on the people that do this every weekend from May to October. It's okay.
Yes. And you never want something to be missed that's like a moment, or something that is like happening that could be a beautiful candid shot. Like I'm always thinking about photography. And
we appreciate that.
Well, absolutely. And I'll ask my couple too. I had one couple, they actually started their wedding day with dinner.
Okay.
Then did the ceremony.
Cool.
Then did dancing. I was like, hello, why have we not done this before?
Yeah.
So she had an outfit change. She wore kind of like an evening gown and then changed into her wedding dress. And I asked her, when you're changing into your wedding dress, do you want your husband to help you? And she was like, oh, yeah, that would be cool. And I said, do you want that photographed? Like, how cool to have that moment. And again, that's like another intimate, just them moment. And she was like, I didn't even think of that.
Right.
So sometimes it really helps to have professionals in your corner, because we've done it, to offer insight that you may not thought of. And then after the wedding, you're like, oh, that would have been cool.
Yeah.
I actually really like that idea of having dinner first.
Right?
Because usually the ceremony is early on the day when, I mean, for us, it's like when the light is harsher.
Well, and to preface that's because we live in Montana and the sun does not set till 9:30 in the summer.
Yeah.
So,
But if you could do dinner, and people like to eat dinner early too, but usually the ceremony is before dinner. And so, that's so cool.
Love it. They came to me, and I kind of stared for a little bit because the wheels were turning, and I think they thought I was crazy. But I was just saying to them, my gosh, what a wonderful idea. So guests were greeted with a drink, and we had dinner. and the ceremony. And there was a great flow to it too, because, you know, we do things in a certain order for sometimes certain reasons, but this worked so well.
Yeah.
It was great.
Yeah. We've heard a lot of that. Like pre-ceremony stuff is becoming more popular, like having cocktail hour when guests arrive then them mingling, and then they go and sit for the ceremony, and then they've had a little snacky snack, they've had a little drink, you know, and I mean, it's not enough time for people to get wasted, which we don't want during the ceremony, but it's enough time, you know, to relax and have that pressure taken off of you. It
is. And it's really, I really love when couples are putting their guest experience forward and making that a priority. And you're right, it doesn't have to be a full bar. Right. Guests could be greeted with a champagne, or perhaps you pick a white and a red and a beer. Like, we don't have to do a full thing. We don't have to be shaking cocktails before your ceremony, but just putting your guest experience forward and like thinking back when you were a wedding guest. What did you like? What didn't you like? And really making sure that your loved ones are taken care of is so cool.
Yeah, I just saw, actually, I shared it on my Instagram story because I was like, this is so cool, is that there was a couple in, I think it was in Bozeman, that they had a hat making party before the ceremony. So they all had hats, these straw hats. So there was like a custom hat company out of Livingston. And so they paid for each guest got a hat, and they could like do the feathers, or they could put a piece of turquoise on it. And it was so cool because it would encompass, you know, all these friends and family coming into Montana. It gave them that experience. They have something to take home that they'll probably use again, or like it's a beautiful memento of the wedding day, you know, that they can bring home with them that they'd actually like, instead of, you know, a little thing with a couple's name on it, you know? So it was just so intentional. It felt
intentional. That's the word.
It was so beautiful. The hat company shared it, and I was like, this is so cool.
I love that. You know, gone are the days of the favors, like you said, like the coasters or the wine stoppers. Gone are those days, because how many times have you opened a drawer and you're like, oh dear, I haven't used this at all?
Right. Those are like my things I purge once a year, you know?
It'll probably get thrown away.
Right. And that's like a waste.
It is, honestly. And if you look at your budget, you know, what you spent on that and that sliver of budget, could that have been moved to something more intentional, like hat making? Or, you know, I'm seeing these interactive seating charts that are so cool. You know, I saw one where the couple, and this is time consuming, but very personal. It was envelopes with a handwritten note on the inside. So the envelope was here, and then the flap was here. And then a little photo of either the bride with the person or the groom with the person, or both, that they had from over the years. And so you went and took your note, and that was your table placement. Wow. And like, how intentional is that?
That is beautiful.
So beautiful. So I'm really excited to see more of that route than like what you think it should be.
Right. And then also with that's so intentional about your guest list. You're not going to be able to do that with your mom's second cousin. I think one time we were chatting, and you mentioned you see the budget as a pie, and so you take, you know, like if you're really big on like a certain venue that might take up a big chunk of the pie, but you also want good food, then your budget for, you know, table decor is going to be smaller. And I think one way to really maximize your pie is your guest list. And being intentional with that.
Absolutely. When you start having, and I think it goes back to the beginning of the conversation of we're engaged, what now? I think it's sitting down with whomever is financially contributing to the wedding, if it's a parent or a loved one, setting boundaries early on, having those conversations. It might be uncomfortable, but it's important, because then you aren't having that conversation 6 months in, and feelings might not be as big and powerful. So when you start that way and you have that conversation, you set your budget pie, then you can really start to think about, well, what are my priorities? Like, if flowers are a priority for you, then, you know, something in the pie is going to shift. So I always tell my clients, identify your top 3. What are your top 3 priorities? Because then it's easier down the road when you start looking at vendors when it comes time. You're going to start looking at florists with a more keen eye, and maybe invitations aren't as important. Not that they're not,
right,
but they might take a little bit of a backseat,
right,
for your budget pie. So I think having those conversations early on is very, very important, because what it does is it creates a smooth road ahead. So you're not potentially getting into emotional conversations that, again, might hurt feelings. I've had those conversations with many couples that, well, mom wants to do this and mom wants to do that. Well, have you talked to mom?
Right.
No. Okay, well then let's talk to mom and have that conversation so that you're not doing it and just heaping on the emotional stress of the wedding too. Because, sometimes what we forget about are the emotions. We talk about the planning, and we talk about and then in the week of, all of a sudden everyone's starting to arrive. So if your wedding's on a Saturday, let's say guests start coming in on a Tuesday, they're reaching out. They want to know, what's happening? Are we going to dinner? And you're like, oh gosh. And then so it starts to feel real. And I always tell my couples, lean into that.
Yeah.
Let it happen. Like, don't stress about it. Like, just feel those feelings. Lean into it and feel those emotions, because it's the one time, or maybe one of the few times in your life, you have all these people that love you and want to celebrate you in one space. And when you think about that and what you're doing, it's so powerful.
Right.
It's so powerful.
Right. And I think in our talks, that's something that has really impacted me, like that you said that, that is the one time. And it's amazing. I mean, until you die, which it's really not.
Yeah, maybe an anniversary, maybe a birthday.
Yeah, right.
Especially when you have people coming in from out of state, out of town, who have spent time on gas, tickets, travel, food.
Right.
My gosh, we know that we go to the grocery store these days, and it's, how did I spend $400?
Yes.
So to have that, and to recognize that, and to thank those people for that, outside of, you're having this wonderful dinner together, like putting their experience forward is so lovely. So great.
Yeah, and I think another thing that goes back to, you should only have the people that love you the most on your wedding day.
Only.
So I think that's so big. That makes me think of another thing that somebody told us. It was a joke at a wedding, that they were like, oh, you don't want people, like too many people there? Then you have a destination wedding.
Oh!
And that cuts your price. But you're kind of an expert on destinations a little bit, aren't you?
A little bit. My husband and I, we got married in Scotland almost 6 years ago. And we did it because we're both from very large families. And we were interested in an experience. We love to travel. That's kind of our thing. And so we thought, we'll do a destination wedding. Not many people will come because it's a great expense unless you're generously paying for travel, which we were not. Our mindset was, well, this will kind of like filter out. It did not for us.
So many people just loved you guys so
I mean,
much.
what a thing to say. We're like, what a thing to feel awful about that. Oh my gosh, all these people showed up. We had 36 people that traveled from the States and attended our wedding, which, talk about powerful. I mean, it gives me goosebumps just thinking about it. But we budgeted for 10.
Okay.
So that's something to keep in mind if you are doing a destination out of country wedding, is you need to be realistic about that number and be ready for the people that you're inviting to say yes.
Right. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Maybe extend it more invites later if you need to.
Of
if you
course,
know somebody can't make it. But
yeah, it's kind of like your A column and your B column, and not that B column isn't as important.
It's just that, A column is the top, your siblings, your parents, your grandparents, those kind of people.
Your circle, your people.
Yes.
And maybe B is, your college friends that you're close with, but maybe you don't see each other all the time. So, and, if some people in A are unfortunately unable to make it, then you can invite those other people that you would like there. Absolutely.
So, I mean, you plan weddings in Montana, but you're open to traveling wherever, correct?
Of course. Have passport, will travel.
Same.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So, and you'll help with everything from A to B or to Z with destination weddings, right?
Absolutely. And one of the big parts about planning a destination wedding in the beginning is asking yourself, do I want to legally get married in that country? Because you can always get married in the United States, have a courthouse ceremony, and then travel to the country and have a beautiful party, maybe even do another ceremony. Right. So there's a lot of paperwork and a lot of different rules with every single country. So knowing those and understanding those can be helpful in that process of even maybe determining, do I want to do the paperwork? Right. So that's something that I can help with, giving you that information, and then you can make the decision, yes, we're going to continue, or too much for us.
Yeah.
Because every country has different rules, right. And there's different documents involved, and you need your birth certificate, and if you don't have your birth certificate, how long is it going to take to track it down? So there's just a lot of moving pieces on the front end for destination, especially if you're going to a country where English is not the first language. One of the rules for a country that where English is not the first language to get married in, you need a translator.
Oh, interesting.
Oh, really?
You need a translator with you when you go to do your documents and with you at the ceremony.
Okay.
So then, how do I hire a translator?
Yeah.
So there's all these different steps and different ins and outs to each country.
That seems like a situation where it would be easier just to get legally married here and not worry about a translator in another country.
Absolutely.
But you would help with all of that. That's something that you would be happy to do.
But how great to have somebody just to help educate you and figure that out.
Yeah, because that's something that could feel, you're so excited and you really want to go somewhere just stunning and make those memories, but then all that, it's almost like a wave crashing into you.
Huge, right?
Yeah.
I have a couple getting married in Italy next year.
So fun.
And we were looking at Amalfi Coast. Well, depending on the license plate of the car you either own or are renting, on whatever, it's something that if the license plate ends in a odd number, you can only drive on these days. If it ends in an even number, you can only drive on these days. And certain parts of the Amalfi Coast don't allow cars at all. So knowing these little intricacies, man, I love research. You give me a topic, I will give you everything you need to know.
That's your producer side coming through.
Yeah. Wow. So if you need to drive on your wedding day, you have to request the right vehicle that you're renting with the right license plate and everything. Wow.
Yeah. So there's some really wild things about different countries that you really need to know. So and some couples do decide, you know what, that's a little more than we want to take on. It's a little more that we want to ask our guests. For us in Scotland, it was really important. Another question you need to ask yourself for a destination wedding is, when your loved ones get off the plane, how much time do you want them to spend getting to your venue? Yeah. So for us, with a plane ride of 10 plus hours, depending where you were in the country, we didn't want our loved ones to get off that long flight and then get in a rental car and drive 4 hours.
Right.
So for us, we got married just outside of Edinburgh, a very short car ride outside in a castle. Because we just didn't want our people to be so jet lagged.
Yeah.
And then you're tired and you're driving on the other side of the road. And God bless my brother, one of my brothers, he watched YouTube videos for manual. Because you're shifting with your opposite hand.
Oh, that's wild.
Yeah,
that's
so
true.
you're driving and you're, instead of your right hand, you're shifting with your left. So he watched YouTube videos because they rented a manual car. Yeah.
That's so funny.
Things you wouldn't
think. Yeah, you would never think about.
Never think about.
Yeah, that's so funny. That's so cool. But those are so important why you need a planner. But you also bring that to domestic weddings, because there was one, I think we were chatting about the difference between an established venue and a private property.
Absolutely.
And that's so different. And there's so many things that people don't think about with that.
So many things. The list is quite long, because look, with private property, you're building what isn't there.
Right.
Yeah.
Especially if we're on ranch. Like if you grew up on a ranch and you want to get married on your ranch, how special and
Yeah,
wonderful is
absolutely.
that? But we're building something that from ground up. So it all really comes down to like starting with the infrastructure. You have to have a tent or a covered structure. You have to have a tent for reception. That tent has to have sidewalls. Those are the pieces of material that come down. They can be rolled up if there isn't weather, but they can be rolled down if there is weather.
Right.
You need restrooms. You need ice. If you want salt and pepper on the table, you have to rent salt and pepper shakers and then fill them. Who's going to fill them? Who's going to place them? So, and it really comes down to you need a production team for setup and tear down as well. How are we doing real plates, glassware, and flatware? Where are we washing them? Because they have to be returned clean. So there's so much more logistics and support and management that goes into a private property celebration than an established venue. Because look, they do it. That's what they're offering. It's like a well-oiled machine, if you will.
Right.
Private property.
Is there power there? Does the DJ have a generator?
Exactly. Exactly. Where are the power sources? Because then you need lighting as well for guests to be able to see where they're walking. Are we doing solar powered? What are we doing if it's not a cloudy day?
Yeah.
And it ends up that there is weather. So it's always, there's just so much more planning. I mean, my head's even spinning now about like, oh gosh, what else do we need to do? So just thinking through those elements.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because I do feel like that is fairly common in Montana. I mean, there's lots of ranch land. There's lots of people that have family members or friends that own ranches, and they have spent time there, and so they want to get married there.
Absolutely. And how wonderful if a family member is gifting you their land, if you will. Like what a beautiful thing. And then once you sit down, that's something that I can also help with is cost comparison. Sometimes it costs more because you're bringing in everything.
Right.
Like ice, like portable restrooms, generators, dance floor, lighting, where at your venue, these things might already exist, or your DJ might bring them in, or your photographer's bringing an extra set of lights. So it's just really like looking at, is it worth it and does it fit the budget?
Right. Is
really what it comes down to.
Yeah, that's something that would be great to have a planner's expertise on, because I think that's probably a misconception that a lot of people have, that like, oh, it'll look beautiful because it's a beautiful ranch.
Yeah, absolutely.
It will be beautiful, but will you have warm beer? Will you will you have to have your guests go in a porta potty?
Yes.
We've done weddings with porta potties. It's not super fun, but those trailer mobile, they're
those are nice. They're real nice.
I was like shocked. Well, the first time we had a wedding with one, I was like, man, this might be nicer than my bathroom.
We've been to some established venues that even use them regularly just to have more.
Like if it's a bigger wedding,
absolutely,
and they need extra.
Absolutely, then that's that thinking ahead aspect to it. Yeah, the trailers are
great,
air conditioned.
Yeah.
Some of them even provide little like baskets with amenities and both sides, which is just such a lovely touch. And again, goes back to that guest experience.
Exactly. Yeah. It's so great. So what are you excited about in your business coming up, or is there any weddings that you're super excited about?
Oh yeah, the Italy one in 2025. Very excited. We're looking at established venue versus Airbnb. Because in my research, I've been finding that there are Airbnbs that do host small celebrations. And so they do have catering upon request. They have transportation upon request. So it's really budget friendly.
Yeah.
And I'm just really excited about kind of getting out of my comfort zone a little bit with my research and exploring a new country as well. Absolutely. And I'm also really excited about couples who just really want to be intentional with their wedding day. I say Pinterest can either be your best friend or your worst enemy.
Yeah.
Because, you start to get on Pinterest and you start to see these beautiful pictures, right? But they're not realistic. They're styled shoots. It's a planner, a photographer, a florist, a designer coming together to do a mock table.
Right.
And it's not realistic to apply that to a 150 guest wedding.
Right.
These florals are in the tens of thousands of dollars. So I tell my couples to use Pinterest as a source of initial inspiration and then how to execute an idea. Like if you want to do leather napkin rings, how did they do it here? Because you get down that rabbit hole and my gosh, your head's spinning, you're overwhelmed. I also tell my couples to set a timer, 10, 15 minutes, then call it. Because then you start getting into this, well, then my wedding needs to look like X.
Right.
Yeah.
It sets unrealistic expectations. Because even if it is a style shoot, there's things you can take away from that. Even if you do have the budget of tens of $1,000s for your florals, that's okay. But also, are you going to have them in season? And then you're playing this comparison game or you know what I mean? Like, I mean, there's the weddings on there that were multi-million-dollar weddings that even if you have that, do you want to spend that on your wedding?
Exactly. I mean, that's talk about a budget pie. Holy mackerel.
Yeah.
So it's just really, and I just tell my couples, lean into your style. Don't try to fit yourself into a design that isn't you. Right. If you're into blushes and creams, you're not going into the world of jewel tones or a moody, eclectic style. Like, do what you want and what you're comfortable with. And, you might have outside talkie from loved ones, and they do it because they love you. They want to help. And again, have those conversations and set some boundaries. Like, hey, Mom, I really appreciate all of the examples you're sending me. We're going this way. We're going in a different direction. And I'd love to see what you can find on that subject, on that topic, People just want to feel involved, especially on the day of. Yes. They want a job. Give them one.
Well, and I think that goes back to creating intentional moments. Like, they're not manufactured, they're intentional. That's when you have your mom help you put on your dress. We had one family that it was really quite interesting. So she was very close with her biological mom. She had a stepmom that raised her and that is no longer with her father, but she was she was her second mom for all intents and purposes. And then she was very, very, very close to her mother-in-law. So we created moments for each one of those women to help her get ready on the day. And it was beautiful. It was really cool. She actually said that some of those photos are her favorite of the day.
How wonderful.
And it never felt forced. It never felt awkward. But those moments, yes, we had them planned, but they were very intentional, and it was so beautiful, and it was so special for her.
I love that, and I love talking about those moments with couples of what's important to them, what are priorities. I'm seeing a trend now too. I haven't had the fortune of executing it, but a situation where bride has dad and stepdad. Maybe walking down the aisle halfway with stepdad, and then dad takes the rest of the way, walking down with both.
Right.
I really enjoy when couples kind of throw out that tradition.
Right.
This is what a wedding is supposed to look like.
Right.
My dad's supposed to walk me down.
Yeah, because my parents did it this way, because cousin Susie did it this way. We don't have to do it that way.
No. And this is what I tell my couples is traditions are great. I love a tradition. But only if that tradition means something to you.
Yes.
Only if that, if a tradition is your dad walking down the aisle, but that's only if you have a great relationship. That's only, why not let your stepdad and your dad, if you have that beautiful relationship together, why not have, if a flower girl, if you're really close to a little girl, you have a niece that is basically your child, that's great, have a flower girl. But if not, then
don't force it.
We've had beer boys. Yeah. We've had gay best friends do choreographed dances down the aisle. Who cares?
I've had a grandmother as a flower girl.
Yeah.
That's
don't have a flower girl if you don't want. Whatever.
Yeah.
But only stay true to traditions if they mean something to you.
If it's important.
Yeah.
You don't have to have a wedding party.
You don't have
shock. I know. You do not have to have a wedding party. You heard it here first. But you don't have to. If it's not if it's not a priority for you, it doesn't mean that there aren't loved ones.
Right.
But gone are the days of 15 on each side.
Right.
You know, we love it, but pictures take a long time.
They do.
Yeah.
They do. And,
It's a
and
huge
nobody
group
is,
like that.
the bigger group you have, the less likely everyone is where they're supposed to be when we ask.
Yes.
And so that takes away from those other intentional moments for
It does.
the day.
It does. It
Because
does.
we really, this is something we harp to our couples. We do not want your wedding day to feel like a photo shoot, because that's not what it is.
Yes.
It is not a photo shoot.
Yes.
And so those we say required, but those pictures that are like those grip and grins, we call them, those are so important because, you know, grandma might not be here in a few years. Something could happen to your best friend. I mean, we just had a bride. I cried because I didn't know this person, but I cried for my bride. She had a cousin that passed away. And her last photo of him, I might get teary, was at the wedding, and she shared that photo of him on Facebook to, you know, like, express her grief. And you don't know.
No.
You don't know. And so those are important. I'm not going to say those aren't important, and we will get through them. But also remember, the more that you have of that, the less time you're going to have for other intentional moments. We're still going to be there getting candids. I also saw this super cute trend that instead of going to each table, they had everybody photobomb them. So
I
they sat in
love
a
that.
chair, and then anyone that wanted a photo with them came and like photobombed them and like did something silly.
How
and so those are going to be
cute.
so much more fun than the
Right?
my cheeks are hurting.
Yeah, your cheeks do maybe hurt after a certain amount of time. And that's where, too, I always like to work with my photographers in putting together a family shot list.
Yeah.
Because we don't know who your cousins and aunts are. We would love to, but we don't. So when you have that family shot list, it also helps kind of whittle down like, what is a realistic expectation for family photos? What can we accomplish in the time that we have? And then what I like to do is work with my team, and you know, we get the first group together, and then either myself, second shooter, my assistant, whomever, is calling out that next group of people to have them on deck. So then once that first group, we can bring in the second group. Because we love our loved ones. But, you know, they're standing around, they're visiting, then they go over here to visit. They might go
get
over
a beer.
Then they go get a beer. And they kind of start to do this. And that's
Yeah.
why we like to try to keep them in the area as best we can.
Yep.
So we can move through those as
And
effective as possible.
Having a planner, having, you know, a bridal day assistant, those kind of things makes it so much easier, because I can be focusing on what's right in front of me, and then they can be getting everybody else in order.
Yeah.
And the planners typically know at least who the key players are.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
that's super, super nice, because sometimes we'll show up, if we don't do day before coverage, we have no idea who people are.
Exactly.
And so sometimes, too, people who aren't supposed to be in photos sneak in because I don't know, but the planner knows.
Yeah.
The planner knows.
And I do know the key players because I co-run your rehearsal with your officiant. So it's a chance for me to introduce myself to your VIPs, as I call them, so that they know who I am and I know who they are. Right. And I also, as part of my service, I take that day of timeline and I squash it down, and your VIPs get a day of timeline. So hopefully,
all
you're
know
still
where
going to
they're
get
supposed to
asked,
be.
but what time am I supposed to be there? What time are
Always.
pictures? Always. So then you can just say, look at your timeline. And if you have questions, they can ask me.
Yeah.
I'm happy to answer those questions as well, and because they inevitably happen. But then that way you're not answering that question over and over the night before your wedding.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be
should
doing
know.
that.
But yeah, I mean, you know your VIPs. You also know who somebody might be a pain point that you need to kind of run interference on.
Absolutely. I always ask my couples, like, are there any family dynamics I should be aware of? Right. You know, I had a couple many years ago come to me and they said, you know, I forget the family member's name. We'll call him Uncle Kevin. They said, under no circumstance does Uncle Kevin get to make a toast.
Okay. Good to know.
Heard. So I went to the DJ. The DJ and I had a little conversation because sometimes there are those instances, or you know, sometimes I may need to have a difficult conversation with a guest. But that's also part of what I do as well. If there's something I need to know, let me know, and I'll handle it as graciously as possible.
Yeah, well, that's part of you advocating for the couple.
Exactly.
And being able to be there for them, make sure everything just they don't have to worry about Uncle Kevin. Like Katie's
Crazy
gonna take
Uncle
care of it, you know?
Yeah.
We all have one.
yeah, we all have somebody.
We do. So just knowing that helps me on the wedding day so that there isn't something that you don't want to happen or a potentially embarrassing situation.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll cut a mic. Yeah. Hey, teacher. I don't want to, nor have I ever.
No.
But,
But if you need to,
yeah.
you're the advocate.
Yeah.
You're the advocate.
If you give me the look, I'll give him the look.
Yep, that's why we love planners, because if you're not there, we do that, and like we will, like
of course.
Or even if you needed something, like we would be there, because that's part of being that team player mentality that we like. But yeah, like it's so nice to not have that we don't have to worry about cutting a mic. We can focus on getting the candidates of your dad giving the toast.
Exactly.
So.
And then you're focused on what you were brought in to do and what you're talented at doing and capturing those moments. It just makes my heart break thinking that if you're trying to figure out where the bride is, because she might be in a different location than she shared, and then you're trying to find people. Right. Where's the bride? We've lost some time here of some potentially great photos, beautiful photos.
Yep.
And then the bride and groom miss out on what they've paid you to do. And and that sucks.
Right. I was listening to a podcast about the planner was sharing how they choose their vendors because they know they can rely on them. And I feel that that's also true with like us wanting to work with certain planners, is because we know that we're not going to have to do that. Yes. We're going to be able to do our job.
Yes.
It's that relationship, and it's so important. Yeah. They were saying like, oh, well, if I have to be able to trust them because I know that they're not going to miss the first dance. I'm like, because that's on me. I'm like, yeah, but it's also on me, because that's the kind of, if you hire the right photographer, then that's on them
Absolutely.
too. That's on.
Absolutely.
You don't want to have vendors that say, oh, well, that's on the planner because you recommended me. No, that would devastate me. I would be devastated.
Embarrassed. It would take me a lot of time to recover from that, truly and honestly.
Right, but same.
Yeah.
Same, because like you only want vendors that it will, if that impacted you, it impact them as much. I also think that that's established businesses where I'm not going to do anything. I mean, of course, I'm not going to let people push me around by threatening bad reviews, because we can talk about that later, because that drives me nuts. But it also, it just, where was I going? John, you're going to have to cut this up because I cannot remember where I was going. John had this moment earlier, but, oh shoot. Where was I
booked
going?
vendors, experience, working together, count on each other.
Yeah, that... I don't know, basically what I was saying is that, like you only want the vendors that are going to want to continue doing this.
Absolutely.
And so that their reputation and their ethics are so entrenched in who they are that they're going to, every minute of the day is important to them.
Absolutely.
They're not going to miss those things because what they do is important to them.
So absolutely. And that's why, when you hire a professional, that professional is also bringing their industry knowledge and their industry etiquette as well. And I'm not saying that you can't work with someone I haven't worked with, but I'm going to have some questions. Yeah. I'm going to want to talk to this vendor and kind of feel them out and get their perspective. And you mentioned it's about relationships. It is about relationships. Working some weddings together during the year, meeting for lunch or coffee on the off season, which we like to do. Just really building an understanding, trusting each other, and that communication throughout the day, really. And so, we find people that we do like to work with, that we work with smoothly, and we fit together. And that's what you want to bring to the plate.
Yep. It's not about being cliquey or having your people, but it's all about trust and that relationship.
Trusting the process.
Yeah. So
I mean, the first time we worked together, we'd never worked together before. But it was great because
it was wonderful.
We knew we could rely on each other. It was great.
It was great. That was a lot of fun.
It was.
Yeah. We had to move that venue a couple weeks before that wedding.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
that was
a while.
I remember getting that message.
But also, though, if it was any couple, they were the best couple.
They were perfect, yeah.
Not that I wish that on them, but just because they were so. They didn't care at the end of the day as long as they were married. That's all that mattered to them.
Yeah,
they
very
were
relaxed.
Such a wonderful couple.
Very relaxed. They were like, oh, okay. And after that conversation, I think by the end of the day, I had reached out to, I think, no less than 10 venues. Oh, wow. So I could give them information as soon as possible. And they were like, oh, wow. They were just so chill and so calm because, like you said, it was important to them that they were married.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And we worked out a venue and it worked out just fine.
Yeah, and it was great. And they were great. And it was one of the chillest wedding days we've ever had. It was almost
for planning a venue just a few weeks before.
It was almost like there was so little. Well, there was a ring drop, but everything else, there was so little chaos that it was almost like.
Is this real?
You were more.
I was more upset
than the bride.
She dropped it. Yeah, it was just.
She was just like, I don't know, I can just find another ring to use or something, and Alyssa was like, no, I'm finding. You're calling between some floorboards.
That's right. Yeah. You told me about
and I
this.
had to go get a hanger.
No, I am finding your ring. I'm getting it out of here. Yeah.
Oh man, of course, because we go so above and beyond for our clients. That absolutely, you're down with a coat hanger, fashioning it, trying to get it out. You know?
Exactly what happened. Yeah, because it goes back to what we were saying before. It's that team mentality. Everything, every part of that day should be about the couple.
All of it.
But the funny thing is our favorite couples are the ones that, yes, it's about them. They've planned it. It's about them. It's true and intentional. But also, it's about that guest experience for them and their love for the people there. And
love it.
It is about them, but they also make it about their loved ones.
Absolutely. It is beautiful. It can be a beautiful, beautiful day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Real quick, Katie, if you can touch on when, because we've talked about this before a little bit, when should a couple reach out to you in the planning process?
Yeah, for your business, what is the best time for them to reach out to you?
That is a great question. In my dream world, you've just gotten engaged and you come to me. Because what we do together is we start from that very beginning point of having those financial conversations with your contributors, if there are any, having those boundary conversations, setting the budget, and then starting the process of let's go look at venues. Let's talk to vendors. That's my ultimate dream situation. But I think after you book your venue, and your main vendor players, like your photography team, your caterer, I think after that coming to me, treat me or think of me as one of your vendors, like one of your big players. Because once that happens, I begin communication with your players. I become your main point of contact. So like the idea being that your email box is not full because my goodness, I can have so many hundreds and hundreds of emails with one vendor. So that's kind of a really good place to be. But having said that, we talked about tradition, that can go out the window. I've had couples reach out to me as little as 2 months before their wedding because they were in it and all of a sudden they started kind of to panic and think, oh gosh, I don't know what to do next. Or they got to a point and they got stuck. So really and truly, there really isn't a perfect moment. I've done weddings 2 months out. I've done them 2 years out. So it's really kind of where you're at in your process.
Yeah. Even if it's late in the game, you can just help them get things across the finish line.
Absolutely.
And
my day of coordinating, my day of coordination service starts the moment you book. I don't show up a month before the wedding and kind of get you through. I'm with you from the moment you book. And then I jump in and I ask for all of your contracts. I read all of your contracts. I make sure I understand those obligations. I introduce myself to your vendor team. Hey, I'm here. I'm here to help. What do you need from me? And then we kind of go from there. I treat it as almost full service planning.
That's interesting wonderful. That you actually go through all the contracts with all the vendors and make sure you know
I do everything. And I'm not a lawyer, of course.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm not there in a sort of legal advisory capacity. It's so that I know that if your venue requires the kitchen to be at a certain level, that I speak with the catering team and that they understand that. because they haven't read your venue contract.
Right. Or if the contract requires all vendors to have insurance, then
Exactly.
you know to ask and
Exactly.
be like, hey, can I get the proof? Can I make sure that we have that on the day of so we're not scrambling or you don't get kicked out as a vendor?
Exactly. So it's really important that I understand the contractual obligations as well.
I love that.
Yeah.
Because sometimes that stuff, like I know that we've had couples that don't know the insurance is required and then they don't communicate to us that the venue requires that and then we have insurance but like we might not have brought proof and
Exactly.
like, so it's like a scramble to find those things and so it's
Exactly.
so important to have some one point of contact that understands that legalese a little bit that can help you navigate all
Absolutely.
of that stuff.
Absolutely. And as a planner, I do carry an insurance policy on myself and my business as well. And some couples get to a point where they didn't know that they needed event insurance. If you're serving alcohol at your venue, you must carry event insurance. Also something I can help with. So it's just like the ins and outs of the industry that if you've never thrown a wedding before or you've never planned a wedding before, you might not know. You need to know, and then it might be too late. Yeah. So I'm there to catch you before that happens.
Yeah, insurance, super important.
So important.
And that's something that people like totally forget about. So yeah, I love that you'll help with that. You'll help with all of that.
Help with that. All the things you didn't know you needed to know, and then you needed to know.
Yeah, for sure. So is there anything else that you want couples to know about or that you would want to share with them?
Great question. You know, I think I harped on it, but I'll just bring it up again. Look for those intentional moments throughout the day. Even if you don't hire a planner, I also offer hourly consultation so that if you want me to drop in and look at the work you've done, maybe point out what needs work or point out maybe the things you didn't know you needed to know. And you can book that as many times as you'd like. It's a really budget-friendly way to get some professional help without having a full-on planner. Have those conversations early on in your process. If you haven't had them, have them. And just really be intentional with your day and that making sure that your day is a reflection of you as a couple and as individuals. You know, don't put yourself in that square hole if you're a circle. It's just not going to work. And then you're not going to feel good on your wedding day. You're going to be kind of, you may be squirmy. Or you just might feel it in your gut or your heart. And what a terrible time to feel that way. What an awful time.
Yeah, for sure.
And the value of a planner just goes beyond running the day, as you guys know. So it's really something that when you sit down and look at your budget pie, like really see if you can work it in. Because it's important that you're present, mindful on your day.
Yeah. The easiest way to make sure that you're present and have a stress-free day is to have somebody be there and advocate for you and plan it for you. And just anytime there's a planner involved, the couples it's just more stress-free. People, even family members, are less stressed.
They are.
Your mom isn't taking care of everything.
Because guests can feel when mom of the bride or mother of the groom or family is heightened or on edge. Guests can feel that too, and then that starts to bleed through their experience. And we just, they've traveled, they've maybe taken time off work, and let's honor that, let's acknowledge that, and give them an experience.
Awesome.
Well, Katie, thank you so much for coming on and talking to us.
Thank you for having
chatting,
me.
so we really appreciate you.
I do as well. Thank you for having me. It's been wonderful.